Hi, welcome back to the channel. I had a bit of a soul search in the last couple of months thinking about which direction I want to take the channel in. What I want to talk about today is AAA development. We've recently heard from Phil Spencer, Sean Layden, and the head of Capcom saying that AAA development can't hold. So let's get into it.
We're on a mission from God.
So, as I mentioned at the start of the video, game development has become way too expensive for AAA developers to continue on the trajectory that they are on. Or as Sean Layden recently tweeted in his response to Capcom's suggestions that game prices are too low or development costs are too high. Both, something has got to give. The center cannot hold. So, are game prices the issue? Or is it how games are developed? The problem with AAA games development are well known to those that follow the industry. Development takes too much time and costs too much money. And in more recent time, the cost is edging closer and closer to the revenue that the games themselves make. This presents a huge risk to those making them. Or, as Phil Spencer, CEO and head of gaming at Microsoft, put it, quote, "Over the past 5 to 7 years, AAA publishers have tried to use production scale as their new moat. Very few companies can afford to spend the $200 million an Activision or Take-Two spend to put a title like Call of Duty or Red Dead Redemption on the shelf. These AAA publishers have mostly used this production scale to keep their top franchises in the top-selling games each year. The issue these publishers have run into is the same production scale cost approach hurts their ability to create new IP." Close quote. Phil has a lot more to say on this, and we're going to keep coming back to that in a moment. But why is this a problem? Why is it causing issues for AAA publishers? And why do we see the industry end up the way that it's ended up? And more importantly, what is the way forward? So firstly, this creates an environment of risk aversion, or in layman's terms, the large AAA publishers are so set on creating huge production pieces at huge cost, they simply cannot afford for them to fail. To mitigate the risk, publishers have been doubling down on IPs that have historically been successful. We've seen this manifest in a multitude of ways. Remasters, remakes, reboots, sequels, and IPs from highly successful franchises that have already existed for decades. As Phil Spencer, again the CEO and head of gaming at Microsoft, said, quote, "The hurdle rate on new IP at these high production levels have led to risk aversion by big publishers on new IP. You've seen a rise of AAA publishers using rented IP to try to offset the risk. Star Wars with EA, Spider-Man with Sony, Avatar with Ubisoft, etc. This same dynamic has obviously played out in Hollywood as well, with Netflix creating more new IP than any of the movie studios." Close quote. I'll use Final Fantasy as an example here to give you a rough mathematical understanding. And please note that I don't have access to all their P&Ls, so I'm making educated guesses here based on industry standard costs. And for the Final Fantasy fans out there, I'm not saying that this was a bad game in any way. In fact, quite the opposite. This is a very good game, and that assists my point. Now, that said, the development costs range from around about 100 to 300 million, and for Final Fantasy, we'll hit this in the middle with about 200 million. Marketing costs will run you around about 90 million to 150 million. Again, we'll aim for the middle with about 100 million. As far as we know to date, Final Fantasy sold 3 million copies, but let's bump that figure up to around about 3.5. Now, if every copy sells at $70, which is unlikely, but we'll assume that it has, that gives them a net revenue of around about 245 million. Based on development spending and marketing, you've just lost yourself a cool $15 million. But Final Fantasy is a little bit more nuanced than that because it is a PlayStation exclusive. So let's assume that PlayStation paid for the marketing. Then you'd calculate that they've made around about 45 million. That's not bad, right? What's the problem? Well, we forgot something. All platforms take around about a 30% cut of every game sold from their storefronts. So 245 million minus the 30% gives you a net revenue of around about 171 million. Meaning they still lost $28 million. And this, even with high attach rates of 7.5% on the PS5. And that is a high attach rate. Normally you'd be aiming for around about 5% as a good attach rate. There simply isn't enough consoles at 40 million to make AAA game development sustainable in growth terms if you are a third-party developer working in conjunction with a first-party platform holder and you make your games exclusive. Sure, over time, they'll sell more copies and eventually end up with profit in their pocket. And of course, these aren't the exact figures, but the point still stands. This is not a great return on investment. Even if I were more generous with the revenue or reduce the cost of development figures, the point would still stand. They would still be losing too much to make this a worthwhile venture and to continue to grow your business. We have hit a stagnation point in the industry. So as I pointed out previously with the risk associated, even with safe AAA development, it's very rare that we're going to see new IPs. Again, Phil pointed this out in the same leaked email, quote, "The hurdle rate on new IP at these high production levels have led to risk aversion by big publishers on new IP," end quote. Recently, we've had an example of a big publisher taking a huge risk with EA's Immortals of Avium. But that title fell flat. And it ultimately ended with massive layoffs at the studio, which is another way we've seen publishers save on cost. You could argue that the timing of that release was its downfall, and I would wholeheartedly agree with that. A smarter move would have been to hold on to that game until a dry period, but that's a whole different conversation. And the point is, it was a massive risk that failed, which is a confirmation to that company to not take those risks going further, which is not good for consumers, not good for gamers. We cannot continue to exist off the same IP, remasters, remakes, reboots for the duration of gaming, which I hope is a very long time. Phil Spencer, the head of gaming at Microsoft, had more to say on this, quote, "AAA game publishers starting from a position of strength, driven from physical retail, have failed to create any real platform effect for themselves. They effectively continue to build their scale through aggregated per-game P&Ls, hoping to maximize each new release of their existing IP. Again, the same IP, recycled in different ways. You see it with Call of Duty. In the new world where AAA publishers don't have real distribution leverage with consumers, they don't have production efficiencies, and their new IP hit rate is not disproportionately higher than the industry's average. And we see that on the top franchises today, which are mostly not created by AAA game publishers. Games like Fortnite, games like Roblox, Minecraft, Candy Crush, Clash Royale, Dota 2, etc. were all created by independent studios with full access to distribution. Overall, this, in my opinion, is a good thing for the industry, but it does put AAA publishers in a precarious spot moving forward. AAA publishers are milking their top franchises, but struggling to refill their portfolio of hit franchises, and most AAA publishers are riding the success of franchises created 10 plus years ago. So where does AAA game development go from here? Do we continue to keep accepting remasters, remakes, reboots, sequels without AAA publishers taking risks on new IP? Well, there's another way, and I do believe I have the solution, and I'm really interested to hear what you guys have to say. So make sure that you comment down below. Please hit the like button and subscribe if you are new here. We'll get into it. So should the industry be passing on price rises to consumers to offset this cost? Is that a solution? There is an argument to be made that the blanket price rises across the industry would go a long way to alleviate the issues. It would ensure continued growth, shore up profit margins, and definitely provide a little comfort to the CEOs of the large AAA publishers. But then consumers, us, gamers, we foot the bill. This is only a temporary move though, as costs will always continue to rise. A fact that Sean Layden pointed out so succinctly. The center will not hold. So there has to be another way. And I believe there is. And I think we're seeing this happen slowly in the industry, maybe a little too slowly. Many of the IPs that have become hugely successful have for the most part come from smaller indie and AA studios willing to take risks that pay off in big ways. As a result, we've even seen AAAs trying to emulate the success of live service games in the mid to late 2000s. For the most part, this has been more costly due to the failures, causing a doubling down on remasters, remakes, and you guessed it, sequels and reboots. The big AAA publishers need to change their mindset. And we've seen some of it take place in recent times, but again, it's just not enough. And there is, of course, no one cure-all solution. But there are some things that AAAs need to do. One of those crucial things is start to diversify their gaming portfolio. This is a keystone in my strategy and what I believe would help drive AAA forward in the industry. They need to stop solely focusing on AAA development. Now, don't panic. I'm not suggesting that they all go AA or indie or cut their budgets in half. This is not what I'm suggesting. What I'm suggesting is that they create smaller teams from existing pools of developers with talent that have ideas to make smaller AA or even indie titles and give them the budget and freedom to make what they want. Now, I get it, it's crazy, but this has already been done with success in the likes of Obsidian, to great success. I know those games went to Game Pass, and that's another big part of my strategy, but we'll come back to that in a minute. But we're also seeing it with Ubisoft's coming Prince of Persia game and Capcom's Kinetsugami Path of the Goddess. Now, sure, a strategy like this only works if you give devs the freedom to create what they want to create and a limited budget. Publishers would need to keep their hands off for the most part. Obviously, monitoring budgets would be something that publishers would need to do, but they need to make sure that they have the right devs with the right talent and provide them with enough resources to create the game that they want to create in that AA or indie space. This also has another benefit. In a time when we've seen massive layoffs throughout the industry, instead of letting talent go, these teams could be put to work creating smaller games and smaller experiences that the gamer is looking for out there. These IPs could then be developed over time to become bigger AAA experiences if they are truly well received. And of course, this won't work every time, and it wouldn't have to. But a smaller budget game that hits like Vampire Survivors is exactly what could help ensure developer growth, the retention that you could utilize within a AAA game development team to great effect, as well as healthy business growth. This is a model we've seen Xbox is using more and more to provide cadence within Game Pass, and it's produced some very well-received games like Hi-Fi Rush, like Pentiment, and like Grounded. This strategy alone is not enough, I think, to save the industry from the crash I believe it's headed for. There's another leap that AAA publishers need to take, and that's the diversification of their sales models. The traditional model has worked up until this point, but it simply cannot hold the market up. It hasn't changed since the brick and mortar days. We're definitely heading for a crash leading into this digital age, and if they don't make changes to the model, it's an almost certainty. Now, I know a lot of you are waiting for me to say this, and you're probably right. Subscription models, like Game Pass, like PS Plus. Imagine you're developing a smaller game or a passion project like Kinetsugami Path of the Goddess, and you sell it to Game Pass for $10 million. You then ensure that your dev costs meet $5 million. Boom, you've made $5 million profit plus sales on any other platform you put that game on. Realistically, if you could pull off quality smaller experiences and sell them off to PS Plus or UB Plus or Game Pass, etc., and you had a few teams creating cadence of, say, 2 to 3 games a year, that could help bolster those huge AAA experiences. Now, of course, you'd not be selling off every experience to a subscription service. And the traditional model has viability as a model. And it can exist, but it has to exist alongside other models. It cannot be the only avenue that AAA has left, otherwise we're headed for trouble. Phil Spencer himself has said on more than a few occasions, traditional sales are still the largest chunk of change in their business. If AAAs were to adopt these new ideas, this would provide more opportunities over time, create growth within AAA, and perpetuate diversity within gaming. There's something else that AAA publishers need to lean into, and this is the pricing of their games. Not every single AAA game is going to be worth $70, and that goes for AAs and indies as well. Games should be valued based on their development costs and their perceived worth. This would help to open up the industry for all consumers. It would also open a window for publishers to start charging extra for those premium experiences. For instance, games like Spider-Man, Gears of War 5 could be worth anything from the $80 to $90 price tag. Well, you've got a side-scrolling Prince of Persia, could be worth $30 to $40. Vampire Survivors, a game that sold millions, could be worth $10 to $20. In this way, you open up the industry, engage more developers, sell more units, and make more money. I think with a combination of these three diversifications within the industry, it'll provide new and more valuable IP and more choice for consumers and drive gaming into the future. Well, that was my video, guys, and I really hope you enjoyed it. It's something that I'm really passionate about, and I want to start doing more of these videos. I also want to hear your thoughts, because whilst I have strong opinions about what I believe the gaming industry should do and in which way it should go, I'm really interested to hear what you guys think. So please do leave a comment down below, and I will try to get to every one of you and respond. If you're new here, please subscribe. We go live with a podcast at 8 p.m. EST every Friday, and it's an absolutely fantastic time. We've got a great panel, and we have great guests. And if you aren't new here and you're enjoying the channel, thank you for the support. I really appreciate every single one of you guys. You guys are absolutely amazing. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.